So here we are. We've got a mentor group study tonight. It's more of a study group. We're just going to talk and discuss a topic that relates to the why we illuminate spaces. And you'll hear the common statements that we want to address aesthetics, safety, and security. That's always the big three terms that are typically used. And I think my a personal opinion is it's kind of a weak or a poor approach because you're not digging in deeper to understand that why, besides just those simplistic terms. Everybody can understand, oh, safety, you don't want anybody falling down and blah, blah, blah. But if you start addressing it deeper, where Chris is going to talk about this a little bit, but we're going to get into the differences of, like, instead of aesthetics, you might consider it as desires. Okay. So desires, and you think about it psychologically or emotionally, you start looking at it's a positive. So typically it will start to address joy and happiness and or calm, relaxation, because it's tied into, it's a positive element, versus the other two, safety and security, are more of a worry or a stress, which ties into like concerns and fears. And those things can create more negative emotional feelings and such, or the stress side of things. So then that's not good. So anyways, Chris, would you like to maybe begin to open this up in terms of what are your thoughts about this? And I mean, let's think of it as a sales perspective, design-centric sales perspective on how we tackle these questions and the why.
Well, I'll share a lived story from 2006. Some of you may have heard it before, but my wife and I got married. We rented a 60s, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car garage home on 10 acres, had an old red barn behind it, off a 2-lane country road kind of. And the owner had built a much bigger home behind us, behind the barn. And it was kind of perched on the top of a little bit of a hill. So we were pretty, it even had a big fence around their whole 10 acres. So, and there was a gate to get into our little house. So it was pretty secure. And then it's in Owensboro, Kentucky. So it's in a high crime area. But they had, out in the little house there was a back patio, and they had enclosed the patio and put a huge wood burning fireplace, but there were floor to ceiling glass windows on all 3 of the sides, and it had vertical blinds. And when we moved in, that was our TV room, and then my wife had her desk behind it. It was a big enough room where she could have her desk to do her work from home. And she closed the blinds every night. And I'm like, why are you closing them? No one's out there, maybe a deer or a squirrel. But she said somebody could be standing right on the other side of that window and I can't see them. And she wasn't wrong. It didn't really resonate. Back then it was safety, security, and aesthetics, but it didn't really resonate with me at that particular time. And the people we were renting from and my father let us use some lights. They let us put some lights out there. We lit up the barn and some trees. But a couple things happened after that. The pear trees outside the window, you could see the barn from the windows. You could see a flag I lit from those windows, and some playground set I lit from, you could see them from those windows. And once those things were all lit, 2 things changed. She never closed the blinds again. And then there were can lights in the room, and there were lights on a fan. We got dimmers for both of those. Didn't really know why specifically. But as the light level inside lowers, your pupil can dilate, and therefore you can absorb the light through the windows. And then those black mirrors turned into picture windows, which is why she never closed them again. And it's just a funny little story. We were watching, it was around Halloween. We were watching a scary movie. It happened to be storming out, all the perfect things to be scared. And we saw what we could very quickly identify as a deer move by. And it's not because it was lit. It was because we could perfectly see it in silhouette as it crossed in front of the barn. And of course we jumped, but we could immediately identify what it was. So that was a lived experience, where she had, under the heading of security, as I think back, she had real fear. And her fear wasn't literal fear, it was psychological, but it was fear nonetheless. And then, Mark, it wasn't until I think I've said this before, but it wasn't until I read your book that security clicked as fear to me, because I used to think that aesthetics and safety and security were subjective words evoking emotion. But once I read your book and realized aesthetics is about desire, safety is about concerns, and security is about fear, I no longer thought of those first three words subjectively. I thought of more of objectively. My new subjective and emotional words were fear, concern, and desire. And every time I go in from a sales perspective and meet a client, I often use those three words, but I'm for sure asking questions and listening for desire, listening for concern, and listening for fear.
No, that's great. Because I think, again, if you tie this to sales, you know, like Chris was saying, if you're open to listening to hear these different types of words, put them into those categories so that you can identify how best to approach the design for the job. But it also then that turns into an easy sale because you're addressing a problem for them. Whether if it's on the aesthetic side, well, it doesn't look nice enough as compared to our neighbors, or it's just a black void. We want to illuminate, you know, so now you're addressing that positive, that side of it versus the negative or the fear or the concern side.
And you had mentioned, Mark, makes, I think, did you just not say it makes the sale easier? Is that the terminology?
Well, yeah, I mean, I just think it does because it's a natural progression because now you're addressing a problem that they have.
Well,
It shouldn't
I
really be
wasn't looking for
considered
you to
selling.
expand. I wasn't looking for you to expand upon that. I just wanted, because that's very important. I mean, I've talked to Joe, for example, a lot. And I know he just does it. We do things because we either our background or some of us are more creative, like you and Joe, than others with your musical background. There's some things we do that we do without even knowing it. And I just want to make sure that anyone who watches this identifies that what they may be doing by nature is important, because people I run into all the time, and I even think I talked with Joe about this. Sometimes you walk in and meet a total stranger, and in 30 or 45 minutes, you know, well, let me back up. You meet a total stranger and they have no idea what they think they want lighting for the front of their home. The picture behind me wanted lighting for the front of their home. They never even thought about the trees. But they don't know what they don't know, and they don't know how much it's going to cost. So they're scared of, or I feel, I'll remove Joe from this, but sometimes I feel that I walk in there and they're fearful of me because they don't know me. They don't know what journey I'm going to take them on, a sales experience or, you know, used car salesman experience. But my goal is to connect with them to better serve them. And I think by connecting with them on fear, concern, and desire, they'll have the money and they'll pass over more of that money if you can relate to them on those, probably other things, but at least those three core things. Does that make sense?
Sure. Mike, any thoughts from all your vast experience, 40 plus years? You know what I'm saying? Like, have you had any of these relationships from this type of experience that you
Sure. Yeah, yeah. Hand over the money. Okay. Just hand it over. You know, just you're trying to compete with your neighbors at this point. So yeah, it's more than that. It truly is. It's mostly security. That's how it goes with it. They're in a place maybe out of the county, where there's no street lights and all that. So yeah, it's a dark hole. So you light it up and they feel safer, and that's good. So yeah, safety, security, and they like to see their house lit up nicely. Okay, it's impressive. Okay.
And Mike, you brought up a good point, because there's a guy I'm working with in Chattanooga. He does Christmas lighting, and he does outdoor cleaning. And I was just talking with him 3 or 4 days ago, and an 85-year-old lady who he lit a house probably is bigger than the one behind me, and he put I call it C9 border lights. You know, where you line all the gables and all the gutters. You put the C9 bulbs all around the house.
Right.
Everybody know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You can visualize that.
Sort of.
Well, it's the bulb. Okay, I'm gonna point. You see this gable?
Yeah.
That gable, those gables. So they're C9 bulbs, and they go around the architecture,
Okay.
right? So he put those up like he does for her. I don't know if he done it in the past, but he went there to take them down, or he called her to ask her, schedule taking them down. And she does not have any landscape lighting. The only lighting she has is, typically your coach lights around the home. And she asked him to keep them up because of just what you said. It brought her a sense of security because she could see out past the house. But she said, I can see out past the house not only when I go outside, but she also mentioned from inside.
Yeah. Yeah.
A good example. Sure.
Yeah.
And she's lived there. Go ahead, Joe.
Oh, I was going to say, I think, and you do a lot of downlighting from areas, so you'll appreciate this. When you walk up to a client's house and they're only used to seeing things uplit, like so many houses in the neighborhood done by other designers, and you just show them things like maybe adding 2 lights in a tree to create some downlighting where they hadn't envisioned that, or some downlighting from a tree along an entrance sidewalk, all of a sudden you bring the security factor in with just the beauty factor that they're used to seeing at so many houses. Because we all know so many designers out there, so-called designers, they just light that house at a bare minimum with some uplighting, and that's it. And sometimes that the house or 2 or 3 trees are lit, but that doesn't give them any general area lighting for safety and security.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good point.
So I got a question for you guys. I mean, how would you imagine trying to provide more for safety and or security? I mean, how could we as lighting designers apply light differently? What techniques would you guys use, or what's important to illuminate versus not illuminate, etc., in a space or spaces? So then that way we can make it feel like it's more illuminated or for safety, for example. I mean, do you have any thoughts on that?
Maybe be a little bit less hesitant to use path lights. I would prefer personally for my house on a walkway or something to maybe downlight it and not fully illuminate the entire thing, but just give you enough to navigate. Whereas, like you said, if you had an 85-year-old person that was, just needed help getting from their car to the front of their house, maybe you use path lights a little bit more to fully illuminate, but just a thought.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
I agree.
Well, and one of the things with path lights, I think we talked about this in the course that, remember, I was teaching lighting design awareness, is that, it's a visual cue. There's a perception value to path lights, which people are familiar with. So because they've seen so many path lights, and I'm not a huge path light fan, but it does make sense for situations where maybe it might be confusing where to go. If you had that visual cue, that's going to make them feel more comfortable at following that cue towards wherever the destination is, besides the softer lighting that it produces too.
Yeah.
But I guess one of the things that where I was kind of going with some of that is imagine, remember when we were talking about illumination versus under illumination? And I
Yeah.
showed examples where under illumination, what happens is because there's such sharp contrast, you have light and then you have darkness. So it looks very spotty. And you see this a lot in landscape lighting because there's no in between or fill lighting is what I'm calling it, is that you want to make sure there's enough soft fill lighting in the area, whether it's from downlighting out of trees, could be path lights like Samuel suggested, or it could be wash lights that are indirectly illuminating a wall, getting that reflected bounce light in there. Maybe it's soft lighting, wash lighting on the shrubs, whatever the case may be. But the idea is to have extra fill light in there so that it feels more secure. You can see easily, and it's not going to impede so much on your emphasis or your focal point because that's a higher level of light. This is a soft, I mean, like look at Chris's picture there. You see the softer light on the lawn area. You're getting that bounce light off of the home. So you're able to use that to fill in the space. It's not so harsh and contrasty, light, dark, light, dark. You've got it, it smooths it out.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, okay. What else? Anything else on that?
I think a lot what you just said, Mark, that's a great point. Filling in the blanks, kind of. I'm not a big fan of path lighting either, but I think path lighting, if it's done more tastefully than we all see it with the runway effect, sprinkling in a few path lights here and there with possibly some downlighting from up in trees. So every few feet, you're lighting a little bit of a pool of light, as well as possibly adding some shadowing into the design as well. And it's not, then you don't have path lights sprinkled everywhere like the runway, and you're getting a little bit of the safety and security along the ways as well. If you've got a winding, meandering path that maybe has some trees alongside of it, just a few different options, because I personally will do anything to not install path lights.
But Joe, you've published some of your work that has where you've implemented that. I don't know how. I don't want to put you on the spot, and I don't know if I could do it. But if while we're talking, you want to change your background to one of those shots, I'd love for you to show one of them.
Yeah, I just did a demo the other night for some clients who are interior designers and moved here from the coast, and sprinkled that a couple downlights in from some trees with some bollards, which are, giving them a little bit of shadow light. Let me see if I can get that to my screen. Does anybody else have this problem when you go to Google Photos? Sometimes you can't get the photos you want.
I have the problem with tech everywhere in every way, especially when I'm on the spot.
Yep.
Yeah.
When you need it as fast as possible, that's when you can't find it.
Is that Scott Beard speaking?
It is.
Yes,
He's
sir.
doing work.
You are in heavy silhouette, my friend.
I'm driving home.
I know.
Let's
I thought you were demonstrating a lighting technique. What's that little? There's like an orange dot right behind you. Is that the moon?
Oh, it's my trailer.
Oh,
Oh.
okay.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Well, it's good to see you guys. I know it's been a while.
Yeah, for sure.
It's
So
good to see you.
how's things been going on your end? And do you have any questions or thoughts here on this topic tonight? I know you came in just a tad behind when we started, but are you grasping where we've started going with this?
Absolutely, yeah. But the way you were explaining using the soft lighting to kind of fill in the blanks, I can certainly relate with that. I just started playing around with washing, like some of the beds that have like bromeliads and some other vegetation that has brighter more, and it's softer light, and but I really like the effect, and you pick up a lot more than what you typically would with either a path light or an uplight when you don't have the opportunity to do any downlighting. So
Sure.
it certainly makes sense.
Well, Scott,
Good.
I don't want to repeat too much for those that are going to watch this video later, but I did want to tell you at the very beginning, we talked about, have you ever heard the words, or do you have, maybe they're on your website. Have you ever heard those words, safety, security, and aesthetics?
Yes, sir.
So at the very beginning in Mark's book, I learned better terminology that I think better connects us to our prospects, which is when you think aesthetics, you think finding your prospect's desire. When you think safety, you think of listening to and listening for concern from your prospect. And when you think security, you're listening for fear from your prospect, or through your questions, you're trying to see if draw out from them if there are any three of those emotions: desire, concern, or fear. Okay, that's what we had
Okay.
kind of talked about in the beginning.
Sounds great. I appreciate it.
Deal.
So Joe, it looks like you changed your background.
Yeah, I got one that I just did a demo the other night. I don't know how good's that showing up, but
Well,
that was a couple lights hanging down, some overhead pendants in a couple places, as well as two up in that one tree back on the far right, creating some pools of light in between where the bollards were placed.
oh yeah, I see. Can you move your? Is there something important behind your head there? Is there downlight? It seems like there's downlighting there on the
Let's
path,
see.
like a stone path.
I'm trying to get rid of this.
There you
Oh,
go.
there you go. You got rid of yourself for a moment there. That's good enough. Okay, so you've mixed your bollards and downlighting just like you talked about.
Yeah, and coming out from between the columns, kind of in the middle of this, there's a Sterling SL12/13, whatever it's called now, hanging over the middle of the arbor there to let them have a nice pool of light as they walk out.
Nice.
Beautiful.
Thank
I
you.
think that's like a total of 11 lights splattered throughout that little entryway to the back gate. And let me see if I can find this other picture that shows the gate coming in. I'm a big less is more proponent fixture wise as well.
Yeah. Mark, did you want to talk about anything, move on while Joe is looking for his picture?
Oh, well, yeah, no, I wanted to expand on some of these things, maybe a little bit in case anybody has interest, but like one question might be is, how or what does aesthetics mean to you? Like for as if it's for whatever beautification, what would you consider to be good aesthetics on a project? And I don't know if you've ever thought about that besides maybe just like curb appeal or whatever, but have you thought about that deeper? I'd like to hear what everybody thinks on that.
Well, I'll go first, just to get it going.
All right.
Simple terms, wow factor. A little more elaboration would, is to try to, at least from a aesthetic perspective, meaning desire, what's going to make it look pretty, the wow factor. A little more detail would be striving to make the home, the property, the landscape into something that it's not when lit by God's one downlight of varying angles and color temperatures. Be able to draw out things that may be less noticeable in the day because there's one huge downlight, and also potentially hide things that may not be as attractive, like an air conditioning unit, for example. Simple example.
Concealment. Good. All right.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Without having light and dark splotches, like you talked about, Mark.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
it's challenging sometimes.
Oh, it is. Yeah.
So
I
you're,
Samuel, thoughts?
you're saying don't put the wash light under the AC unit, Chris?
Correct.
I'll answer it next. I think of when I think of really good aesthetics, I think of a one of a kind, because obviously every house or landscape is going to be different, but you can just go really generic. I like one of the things that got me interested in all this is just having kind of loose memories of places that I've been that felt like the only place in the world that had that exact feeling and the exact lighting, and I don't know, so many of the pictures that I seen over this course, I'm like, man, there's no other place on earth that's like that. It's just you have to go here to get this feeling, and so that to me it's a lighting that's suited super well to that space. But
That's a great answer. I like that.
Smart kid.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Scott, any thoughts?
Aesthetics.
Aesthetics. Like what would, when you hear that or you're thinking about beautification of a property, I mean, what typically comes to mind or how you might address that if somebody was asking you that?
Yes, when when I'm having a conversation with the homeowner and I'd like to ask them, why am I here? What is it that you're wanting to accomplish? Is it you're wanting to improve the aesthetics of your home? You're wanting to increase the safety, security? I mean, that's kind of, I always use those, that's
Mhm.
kind of what I always say.
Sure.
And I don't know, I guess in my mind, I kind of have this picture of um, just a house that's, just a beautifully lit home that, I don't know, it's like kind of hard to explain. Just the kind of the beautification of the property.
Yeah. I think not to cut you off, I think a lot of people, if you think about this and we start asking ourselves these kind of questions, on these terms and these different things, it makes you think, well, what does that really mean?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So, well, I mean, if the house doesn't currently have outdoor lighting, and, maybe it's just got some coach lights on on either side of the garage or the light at the front entry. It's just
Mhm.
kind of plain and dark, but you don't see all the little features of the
Sure.
property that you would see during the day.
Yeah.
So, as far as the aesthetics, you're really just making the property to where you can see all of those features at night that you typically wouldn't see.
Sure.
They're obviously visible during the day. And a lot of times I think, things look much better at night when they're lit.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. How about you, Joe? Any thoughts?
You know, sometimes you have to show people things that they don't see, that are there, but they just don't really visualize it. This one I just pulled up behind me here. This is three lights from up probably about 18, 20 feet up in trees crossing with 120-degree bulbs just lady had this beautiful path she had carved out back here between a tree area, a natural area in her backyard. And she, as so many people do, called about lighting the front of the house, which we did. But I said, gosh, look at this beautiful area you've carved out back here and planted all these ferns and stuff. And you can see it from your windows on your deck at night. Let's do something back there.
Mm-hmm.
Very simple, but man, the ambiance and atmosphere now she can have looking out from her back deck at night. You know, just the tiniest little thing like that the client wouldn't have thought of.
Joe,
Yeah.
did you mean when you were over there, and maybe I misunderstood you, when you were over there during the day and you were on her deck, you said, look, you can see all that in the daytime.
Yes.
What could we do
Yes.
after dark? Right?
I mean, it just disappears. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
I have a question, and maybe this is a little shoehorned in, but I think it does apply to people's desires and the ultimate aesthetics. One thing I've noticed just talking in general is, we're all talking with other people that aren't into this stuff. We're all very familiar with, low voltage and stuff kind of taking over in most cases, especially residential cases. Do you guys ever run into people who have a connotation of LEDs being cheap or having like a specific color temperature? Like I've heard of so many people think that LEDs come in, or like, I think they picture a 4,000 or something, and the cheap solar lights and stuff, as opposed to maybe people growing up who saw landscape lighting would see incandescence, and so now they have that. And yeah, I could keep blabbing, but I think you guys get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that ever happen? Do you guys have to try to corral people into understanding that?
Mm-hmm.
In my region, Samuel, I've never had anybody say LED's cheap just because they can go to their big box store and compare the 60-watt incandescent medium base old screw-in bulb they bought, compare that to an LED one, and they know they're not cheaper around here anyway. I've never had anybody equate the solar path lights, even though they knew they were LED, just because they didn't last or they put off a cool temperature, that they were cheap. On the other hand, for several years, until I don't know how recent, but recent, when I would mention LED, people sometimes would physically cringe because, and I used to tell them, it's not like on that fancy foreign car, because all they thought was bluish white light.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
Sam? Yeah.
Like the headlights. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's why I brought this in as an aesthetic kind of thing, because I think I could see people immediately going, "Oh, I'm not gonna get. I was desiring this, and now I'm getting this other thing." So yeah, you're saying their expectations aren't tuned to what they're gonna get.
Yeah, my biggest problem was they didn't know what they were saying, but it was color temperature. Oh my gosh, it's like, no, I don't want that bluish white light like I saw on the BMW that blinded me. But this was, 7-8 years ago, right? So as time, and then sometimes they'll say, well, or they couldn't explain it like that. They'd say another one I get around here, oh, I don't want that Walmart white, sign white, right?
Yeah.
But in quick order, pull a couple pictures up, like the one behind me, and say, that's all LED, and then you nip it. But again, I don't know, has anybody else here come across people saying LEDs are cheap? I just never have.
No, I've had, because, you get some older people that maybe they were exposed to the initial onslaught of LED and it was really poor performing, cheap, or it would be the bluish white light. So that's all they've been exposed to, or maybe they have those old sets still in their yard. And so that's all they've ever experienced, right? And they don't really know, they haven't educated themselves, I guess, enough to really see the differences. So I've had it happen in the past, but I say, oh, no, we're way beyond that now. But it happens, not as much lately, but for a while there was.
Yeah.
Well, in my, I wondered if it was, it helped smooth things over to say low voltage, but then, I just try to think of it as someone who's not in this world at all might just immediately go to, oh, I'm gonna have some dinky dim lights. I haven't mentioned that, but I just wonder how you guys get through that and make sure that people's expectations aren't going like this as you walk them through. You can keep it a smooth line to just enjoying the process, I guess. But
Yeah.
Well,
I
And I,
Cindy, but I
maybe-
can nip that in the bud with a few pictures, and then even if you don't have the pictures, you've been a part of it, of Ellie, and you can get us to share a picture with you.
sure.
This
I
tree
think
line.
I think color temperature is a little bit more regional thing with some people as well. Being as traveled to Florida and seeing what some of our cohorts do in Florida, I think there's a lot more of the blue white light in Florida in the projects down there with those giant white columns and white stucco houses and stuff. To whereas my neighborhood, I'm using a lot more 2700.
Well, Scott's driving in Florida right now. What say you, Scott?
I just lit one of those bright white houses.
Yeah. What color temperature did you use?
I mostly use 3000.
Okay.
Mostly use 3000. In some occasions I'll use 2700 if it's if it's a little bit of a warmer color.
But I think what Joe was referring to is he's seeing a lot of, tell me if I'm wrong, Joe, but 4000K and up, right? Whiter light. Are you?
Well, I mean, I think in Florida generally, with the people that are in our occupation, when you look at their websites and things, you see a lot more of the brighter white light in general in the Florida area. I don't know how that is in LA because LA and Vegas isn't like North Carolina where we've got the crepe myrtles, the river birches, the beautiful lush green lawns with mulch. You guys are a lot more doing things out there for fire purposes. And in Vegas and LA, there's a lot of different landscape going on out there, as well as the looks of the houses with the terracotta roofs and the stucco looking walls that we don't see so much in North Carolina. So I think you've got to look at that depending on the regional area you're in sometimes as well, and see what's going on down there.
Mhm.
I mean, I can see, you have some properties that are more, a lot more modern looking, and like you mentioned, homes up north that have siding or wood paneling, versus like the stucco. I mean, I can see where you're coming from with that, but
Well,
I wouldn't say a lot of homes look like that though.
and Samuel, maybe if in the early parts of presenting to customers, maybe instead of just saying LEDs, maybe you can say the light sources or
Mhm.
light source and kind of make it more general and broad and don't unless they ask, and then you're just showing the photos that will help. You can avoid that I guess, exposure to thinking, oh, I don't like LED, that type
Yeah.
of thing.
No, and I don't want to overcomplicate it. I think you guys gave me the answer is to just start with pictures, start with examples. So their expectations, they know what they're getting. They're not trying to construct it in their head. They're going there, and then you're telling how you're going to bring their house there. So yeah, I don't think we need to complicate it more than that. So.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Anything else? What do you think, Mike? Any other additional thoughts?
Well, I'm thinking of the aesthetics again. I'm just going back. I'm just listening. Okay. So with me, it would be ask the client, is there an art piece? We light a lot of art pieces. Now, it doesn't matter if it's a little thing, could be a windmill, okay, or a boulder, okay, a birdhouse, a fountain, of course. You want to do that. An address. and address. Simple, but needs to be done. Okay. A favorite water feature, any water feature is good, or even a playground set. Okay. That's good too. You can have it on a different switch or a different transformer so the kids could play outside in the summer. All of a sudden it would go off. We've done that as well. And I'm not afraid of 4000K lights. I am not. We use them in trees on big properties that are way in the back. You can't see them from the house hardly. No problem. Okay. And we're in a prairie here. So there's not many trees near the homes. So we have to use path lights to light a walkway. That we have no choice. There's no other option. If you try to light it from the house, it looks awkward. So yeah, that's how we roll here.
Good, good. Well, I think again, you coming back to some of your points on the aesthetics, like Samuel said about making it unique
Yeah.
to that site. So then that way it's powerful to them, and then it's different from the neighbors because everybody's got something different. So that's good.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Good.
How about let's look at the opposite side here. Like, how do we make a space more secure? Like for the security factor. Any on like what you guys typically do to achieve, to make that to address security issues? I mean, besides that, just say no, go ahead. Sorry, I'm babbling.
A lot of times up like on the, in the backyard, a lot of times, if you have a fence or, like a hedge across the back, a lot of times I like to kind of accent the border, that way you can see the boundaries. And on my fence, I've got some, like every other post, I have from 2700, I've got a deck light, which is very, very soft. But it's just enough to where you can see the entire backyard, let the dog out. You can see where she's at, see if there's any possums or anything out back.
Nice.
That's what I do.
Okay.
So for me, kind of along with what Scott was saying, security, but finding their fear. If you're in their backyard and they're wanting you to light the backyard and you see a gate that has plant material all around it, pretty hidden, could be a trespass point. My first concern isn't to jump ahead of them and start telling them I will illuminate that for security without first just asking them, first of all, as Scott said earlier, why am I here? Well, I want you to, why are we in this backyard? What do you want to do? That gate may be their least concern. Where does their security issues or fear begin? With my wife at that home we rented, her fear started inside the home before she even went outside. Her view through those windows or lack thereof. Then along with Scott was saying, if there is someone that has a dog and they take them out through a gate, well, you need to find out, you need to discover those, go in the house, see that they have a dog, ask them, you're out back, you're asking about security, maybe you saw the dog, like Scott had said, this yard's fenced in. So if they have security concerns, if they have fear, is it because they let the dog out, can't see the dog, or they let the dog out and they have an invisible fence? So now there's access for people to come from every which way. There's no barrier for a person to come at them. So what are their concerns? Because there was a guy that Fitz in Florida that had mentioned to me once. He was taking the class and he and I were talking in between sessions, and he had mentioned that he went and met a lady. She said she wanted him to come out because she wanted lighting for the front of her house. And elderly lady, he got there, he walked inside and she had a brand new puppy and he loves dogs. So he was petting the dog, talking to her about the dog. And they sat down and he did ask her why am I here? And she said, well, I told you I want you to light the front of the house. And he said, well, why? You know, he had done a little bit of research before. She'd lived there for 30 or 40 years. You know, why now? What's changed? And of course, she had told him in the beginning, you know, my neighbors have lights and I like them, etc. Well, that can make somebody think aesthetics or desire, but it wasn't that at all for her. She had just got this new puppy. On the right side of her house, she had put in a dog run, I think it's called, but it's also a place where she lets the dog out, and it's dark. And it had a coach light on the door, but when she turns the coach light on, and I'm living this right now, it lights the area right in your face, which causes your pupils to constrict. Now you can't see 20 feet past the door, and it's unnerving. So she wanted light on that, in that dog run area where she didn't feel on stage. She wanted to be able to see out. And so how that affected his design, because he wanted to address that. So now he had downlighting on the right side of the house. He told me he wanted to do downlighting on the left side of the house and then he built the lighting design around the front of her house so it all flowed. But his design started on the right side of that house because of her fear or security issues via the dog run with her new puppy that she loved. That's where the design started.
It's interesting too how you mentioned the fact you turn on that pilaster or the wall mount light, and then
Yes.
she's got glare, which is a concern, an annoyance. So now you've got two problems there. So yeah, changing
And
that.
it's fear, Mark. It's fear, brother, because for 20 some years or 20 years that I was married and working with night lighters, I had lighting on every home. Now I'm living out in the country with no lighting yet. But I have coach lights on my doors, which are on every freaking night, because I went from living in town because my wife is a city gal to now I'm out in the country with woods around me. And now I'm a little bit freaked out waiting for Sasquatch to charge through the woods and come at me. And I open that door and I want to put some trash in the trash can, and that coach light's glary, and I'm freaking out to even go out there. It's almost like I want to turn it off so Sasquatch can't see me.
Yeah.
I feel like a target. It is unnerving as all get out. Now, people around my neighborhood, they never lock their doors. The guy I bought the house with that lived here for 20 some years never locked his door. So it's all psychological fear for me, but I am very uncomfortable. I go to the gym in the morning. I don't have a garage yet. So I walk around my truck and it's dark and I'm waiting for something to jump me.
Oh, Lordy.
Nice. No, that's good. See,
Yeah.
these
That
live experiences right here.
does just the opposite of what it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
Has anybody ever been shopping in the evening? You know, you go in the store for a few minutes and you come out, it's completely pitch black outside, and you notice what Chris has been talking about. You can't see anything in the windows as you're walking out of the store, because the new lighting they put in all these stores now is so god awful bright that it's blaring on the floor, causing a glare as you're walking out, and you literally can't see anything but all the reflections in the store in those windows.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
It's the worst lighting ever. I think it's just so many of the grocery stores have done this in the past year in this area. It's almost unnerving walking out of that.
Yep.
Well, you know, we could look at this too, you know, thinking about these things, what we're talking about here. Now, here's another part of add-ons that you can do for a customer that with your lighting design, maybe you change these poor applications that they currently have to make a better experience, a living experience for them. Because that's really what it's all about. You know,
Yeah.
you have a good, positive, comfortable living experience, stress-free, and all these things matter. Glare, hot spots, over illumination, under illumination, reflection. So think of that too, and as part of your arsenal when you're selling these jobs. This can be part of your whole. You're providing a better living experience for these people. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
I have a quick question, just relating to kind of what Chris was talking about earlier. I don't know if there's a name. I mean, just the one-way mirror kind of effect with the windows. Is that is that something that is kind of a happy accident when you're lighting everything else? If you can get, and obviously the light levels, if they dim inside, that gives you way more control. But I mean, is that something where if someone says security, that you can almost like build into your design that this is, I'm going to achieve this effect, or how does that play in?
Well, first of all, Samuel, it's not a one-way mirror, it's a black mirror. And
Okay, like the show, yeah.
it's dark where you're at. All you gotta do is open a blind and look out the window and you'll see a black mirror. Right? Because you
Okay,
see yourself.
I like that. That's a good
Yeah,
phrase for
you
that.
see yourself and you're surrounded by blackness, right?
Mhm.
And I have to say,
Interesting.
Mark is so knowledgeable about everything from the past. I believe I actually, the first time when we started in 98, my father was 100% nightscaping. And I believe we heard the whole black mirror into a picture window from Bill Lachlan with nightscaping.
Mhm.
Black mirror into a picture window, Samuel.
Okay, but can you assure somebody that you're going to be able to achieve that effect, or does that?
Well, only if there's something for you to illuminate on the other side of the window. If
Okay.
you look out one of your windows and you're looking at grass
Mhm.
and no trees, nothing with elevation, then it's going to be very difficult for you to turn that black mirror into a picture window because you're not putting light through the window. You are lighting something outside the window that fills the frame of the window. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how dependent on that? How dependent is that on where the outside observer would be looking at the window from? Do you have to be on the other side of the yard looking through the tree or through the bush, or do you have, how does?
So say that again about a person outside looking
So
in.
how dependent is it on the perspective? Like if you stood 5 feet from the window versus by the street, if it's a normal suburban size yard, I mean, will you get that same effect, like getting the black mirror from the outside? Would you get that same effect from anywhere in the yard, or is it very
All right.
dependent?
So I don't want to go too deep, but first of all, there is no black mirror outside because you're outside.
Okay,
Follow
fair.
me?
Yeah.
If if you're inside your home, do you have any windows that look at a tree? Samuel?
Yes. Mhm.
All right. So when you get off this call, walk up to that window and you should, if it doesn't have light on it, you should see a black mirror. You should see blackness with you reflecting in the window.
Mhm.
And then if you go outside in the daytime and get on the street or in the backyard and look at that same tree with that same window in the backdrop, okay?
Yep.
That's that view. So there's two views. There's a view for you of that tree in the house to turn your black mirror into a picture window. And then as a designer, you can conversely consider what strangers see as they pass by. Say, for example, you got a window on the front of your house and it's your office. And you sit there and you got a beautiful Japanese maple, or crepe myrtle. Those are Joe and I's favorite. Crepe myrtle. You know what those are, Samuel?
Mhm.
Yep. So you got a crepe myrtle right in front of your window. Very woody, lots of flowers, especially in Joe's neck of the woods. Beautiful specimen to make a great turn your black mirror in your office into a picture window. And conversely, when somebody drives by, if you've just lit the Japanese, or excuse me, the crepe myrtle, what's going to make that crepe myrtle pop is for you to put the light between the window and the tree. Okay. So you kind of
Okay.
front lit it from the perspective of the window. So if that's all you do, then when somebody drives by at night, they're going to see kind of a silhouette in front of the tree because it's backlit from their perspective. Okay.
Mhm.
So that almost can invite their eye past the tree into the window to look at you. So you can, in certain situations, or you may have to, for your clients, added level of not really security, but comfort, is you can light it from the front and it can have nothing to do with seeing the tree as people drive by. It can actually create a visual block so that as people walk and drive by, they go, look at that beautiful crepe myrtle. Instead of, look at Samuel sitting in his office picking his nose, right? Now, I always tell people, I can't stop somebody from getting their binoculars out, parking their car and looking through the window. But for the average passerby, they're going to go look at the beautiful crepe myrtle from outside. Inside, you're going to be looking at the beautiful crepe myrtle. Does that make sense? So your different
Yeah.
perspectives. Am I kind of answering your question?
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
So
yeah,
if you like that crepe myrtle on the outside so it looks really beautiful as somebody's walking and driving by. You in the office with your desk light on are going to get probably little to a subdued view because you don't have any light on the backside, so it's kind of dark. And remember, the brighter it is inside the house, the pupil constricts, the light level goes way outside. So you've got to elevate the light outside, but you elevate it outside too much, and I'm going to blow your mind here. Depending on where it's at, you elevate it too much. Then when somebody goes outside, say your office window faces the backyard, the crepe myrtle's sitting by a patio. You really light it bright so that when you have the lights on in your office, oh my God, it's beautiful. But then you go to sit on the patio, 2 minutes, your pupil dilates. Now you look over at this crepe myrtle and it looks like it's on fire. It's so dang bright. So there are solutions to that, which Mark teaches about, but it's just lots of angles sometimes to consider how one simple little crepe and how it can be appreciated, right? Inside out and outside in.
Mark, for example, this picture was taken through a patio window. This was looking at the client's backyard.
Yep.
There you go. Now the lights are kind of off or subdued in the patio area, Joe?
The patio area itself, but the trees, the backdrop is the trees all the way in the back. He had a really thick accent. He goes, "My backyard looks like a movie set."
There you go. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, Samuel, think of it this way. It's like the glass will reflect to whatever side that there's more light.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have more light inside, you can't see out. If it has more light outside and your inside's dimmer or less light than the outside, that's when the eye will go through the glass. You don't get the reflection.
Yep.
Kind of like
So that's how you have to treat it. Say again?
So I guess I guess the core of my question is, that's obviously the case, and there's a point where the effect flips essentially with the light levels as if you have no lighting outside. I don't want to spend too much time on this, so I'll make this the last thing. I guess my thought is you wouldn't ever really design to create a certain you wouldn't design it to achieve that effect. That seems like it's downstream of all the other constraints that you have and desires and things. And so I guess I was just wondering if that's something where when you're designing it, that's going to happen, or if that in the best cases it turns out that way where you don't get the black mirror. But I think it probably sounds like I need to just play with a lot more lights and figure that out.
Well, but also, it goes back to like Chris's process, like when you're asking why and how do you use your space and what's most important. Are you in that office all night long versus if it's a dining room or a kitchen or some area where you may be in there a lot at night, you want to be able to see through to the outside to expand the space. Maybe the office, you're not in there every night, so it doesn't really matter so much. Or installing dimmers, remember, on the inside so that you can lower the light levels. That way your eye will definitely go through to the outside as long as it's illuminated.
Yeah,
so there's tricks. Yeah.
Try an experiment at your own house, putting 2 lights out in the backyard on a tree, an object of art, anything like that. And then with your lamp in the house, maybe fan or something there, with a dimmer on it, that where you look from a room that you look out into your backyard and look at the different aspects. Walk over to the right side of the house and look out those windows. Nels Peterson sold me on going into the client's house to look out and see what they see from in their house as it gets dark. And that's a great thing if they've got huge windows, which so many of the huge estate homes have. Some of them, the entire back of the house is all glass. And you want to see what they see when they're looking out at night as the sun goes down, and create a portrait of light for that client to see.
Yeah. And Sammy, you had said a minute ago that you didn't want to belabor on this, but it can be very crucial. And I'll share just this quick little story. 2012, I was down in Tampa for a conference, and a friend of mine took me to several of his jobs, and we went to a client's house that was beautiful home. It had one of those eat-in kitchens, Samuel, where it had all glass, like Joe said, it was all glass. And it was one of those doors that disappeared into the wall. So it would open up this huge covered patio, grill, hangout, TV, fireplace. Then beyond that was the pool, the slide, an in-ground trampoline. You had kids, and this guy had lit it up, like not overlit it, but it was just light everywhere. Disney World. It was so festive. And I'm like, I told the guy when we got in there, his family was gone. And I said, man, I bet you guys, because it's Florida and I'm from Kentucky, I said, I bet you guys just slide those doors open a lot of evenings and just let that outside come in and everything. He goes, no, we're busy. He and his wife both work. The kids are always going. They're doing this, piano lessons, ballet, football, whatever. He said, you know what I appreciate the most is just because of a hustle bustle is when we get home, he said, just looking at that view is so beautiful. So it doesn't, nor should it be an accident if you ask if you get those questions answered. Like if it was a happy accident for the guy that did the job because he didn't know that. It was a happy accident. I've had those happy accidents. But had he sat down with the guy and understood that his lifestyle, then he may have chose purposely to light it to bring the outside in.
Okay.
Awesome.
Thank you guys. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. All right, we're gonna button up here. Any final thoughts or questions that you guys have? Anybody? Okay. Well, then basically thinking about this again, the point of this conversation is to try to get you to think a little deeper on these terms and then to understand the fact that, if we can answer or solve problems for our customers, whether it's giving them what they desire, like we talked about, solving a concern or solving a fear, then that's a natural sale. It's sales. So it's part of that process. Use that to your advantage because a lot of guys don't, and it's a powerful thing. So thank you guys.
Yep.
I appreciate it. We'll see you
Hey,
next round.
Hey,
And,
Sam,
yeah.
What's that?
I was going to say, does anybody know the name of Jan's newest book, the one with all the pictures in it?
I can't remember. No.
That would be a good book for you to find, Samuel.
That
Janet
sounds
Boyd
like it.
has a new book out that shows a lot of techniques with pictures. Her first one would go way above most people's heads with all this
Yeah.
technical knowledge that nobody can understand.
This one right here. I don't know if it's gonna do.
If that's the first,
That's the old
book,
one, I think.
yeah, that's got crazy things in there. Like
Yeah, it's kind of what it's dense.
what steak are you going to use in the desert versus the Midwest? It's crazy.
Yeah.
But the new
That sounds great because there is the color plate pictures. There's only so many of them.
Yeah.
So I think a whole book of them would be really valuable for
See a
me.
lot of
yeah,
good
she's got
techniques.
some mirror image stuff in there, looking out the windows, and some really nice things. Shorescaping, one of the coolest things that she did on a project. There's a lot of pictures that would be helpful to look through.
Yeah.
Great. If anyone has that, send it my way. I'd love to get hold of that.
And George Gruel took all those pictures. Okay. Her partner, George Gruel,
Oh yeah.
he took all the pictures. Okay.
That's a great partnership. I was telling Mark with when I took some photos of my backyard, I didn't realize how big of a part of the overall effect is in the photographer's hands.
Yeah.
A bad photographer can make a good design look really bad. So
Yeah.
I that's got to be great to have a husband who knows exactly what your vision is.
Right.
Samuel, do you have a pen or a pencil?
Yes.
The name of the book is The Art of Landscape Lighting. Over 8 color photos.
Awesome name for a book.
Yeah. There you go. All right.
I appreciate that.
All right, guys. Well, we'll see you this next month. more to come.
All right.
Great.
Sam?
Looking forward to it. Yep.
Hang
Have a good day.
on. Just, I'll call you tomorrow. Have some photos for me, okay?
I will. I
We'll
will.
go
I
over that
appreciate it.
stuff, all right?
Will do.
All right.
Sounds
Very
good.
man. Good to see you
Thank you.
again. Yeah.
All right, guys.
Bye, guys.
Okay, guys.
Bye.